I walked into my parents' house thinking it would be a 5-minute pit stop just to grab my charger. The familiar scent of vanilla candles and old leather books hit me instantly, and for a moment, I smiled at the little details I used to take for granted. My silk blouse clung lightly to my shoulders as I moved through the hallway, heels clicking softly against the hardwood floors. Then I froze. Laughter.
Cheers.
Confetti. And somehow 102 people packed into our living room, waving glasses and balloons, all staring at my brother, Ethan Hayes, in the middle, grinning like a kid in a candy store. Engagement party.
Surprise.
Of course. I leaned against the doorway, heart thumping, trying to reconcile the calm, composed woman I'd become with the knot of emotions twisting inside me. Pride. Jealousy. A strange pinch of nostalgia. And yes, a tiny flicker of irritation that no one had thought to tell me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I ignored it, taking in the scene. My parents' smiles were a little too wide, their eyes glittering with excitement, and maybe, just maybe, judgment. I ran my hand along the wall, feeling the cool paint beneath my fingers, steadying myself. I had come for a charger. But now I was standing in the middle of a celebration I had no idea was happening, and everything in me, past, present, pride, and pain, demanded attention. I took a deep breath. This wasn't going to be just another visit home. I remember that night like it was yesterday, even though it had been years. I was 17, sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, textbooks scattered around me like a fortress against the world. The air smelled faintly of my mom's lavender perfume, mixed with the lingering scent of Ethan's cologne from the hall. He had just gotten home from his first big football game, and, naturally, all attention was on him. I had hoped for a simple conversation with Mom about my scholarship letter, the one that could change everything. But the words caught in my throat when she waved them off, eyes sparkling with excitement for Ethan. "You're dreaming too big, Madison. Maybe focus on what's practical," she said, tucking her hair behind her ear. Practical. That word felt like a wall between me and the life I imagined. My hands shook as I clutched the letter, and I wanted to scream that I could do it, that I could be more than just the good girl behind my brother's spotlight. But I stayed silent. That night, I ran to Grandma Lucy's kitchen. The old woman was stirring a pot of soup, humming softly. She didn't look up immediately, just handed me a small, leather-bound notebook. "Write it down, my dear. Every plan, every dream, every step you'll take. Don't let anyone decide what's practical for you," she said, her voice gentle but firm. I nodded, tears spilling onto the pages before I even touched the pen. That notebook became my secret, a reminder that I was allowed to carve my own path, even if the world around me didn't see my worth yet. By dawn, I had packed a small bag, kissed my sleeping parents and Ethan on the cheek, and stepped out into the cold morning air. I didn't know exactly where I was headed, only that I needed to stand on my own. The sting of rejection, the quiet dismissal of my dreams, had pushed me into independence. And I promised myself I wouldn't look back until I had made something extraordinary of my life. That small leather notebook wasn't just paper and ink. It was my compass, my silent cheerleader, my rebellion against a world that tried to tell me I wasn't enough. I didn't know it at the time, but leaving home that morning was the first real step toward the life I would build for myself. With Grandma Lucy's notebook tucked under my arm and a duffel bag slung over my shoulder, I stepped into the city that smelled of opportunity and exhaustion in equal measure. The first few months were brutal. I slept on a futon in a shared apartment with 2 roommates who barely tolerated my early morning routines. Coffee became my constant companion, its bitter warmth a reminder that I was awake, alert, and responsible for no one but myself. Every rejection email from potential internships or freelance gigs made the lump in my throat grow, but I refused to fold. Then I met Clara Jensen, a seasoned editor at a small publishing firm, who saw more than my nervous hands or my timid pitch. "Madison," she said on our first meeting, "you have the kind of spark that refuses to dim. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise you'll grow." Clara became my mentor, and under her guidance, I began to navigate the world I had only dared to dream of. I learned the art of negotiation, the rhythm of deadlines, the subtle power of asking for what you deserve. Long nights blurred into early mornings, and the apartment became both a home and a battlefield, cluttered with notebooks, open laptops, and half-drunk cups of coffee. There were moments of crushing doubt. I would glance at my phone, seeing Mom and Dad's posts about Ethan's achievements, and wonder if I had made a mistake. But every time, I opened my notebook, read my own words, and remembered the fire Grandma Lucy had lit in me. Don't let anyone decide what's practical for you. Little victories piled up. My first freelance article went viral. My first paid assignment brought a thrill I hadn't felt since childhood. And when I finally landed a contract with a reputable publishing house, I let myself smile in a way I hadn't allowed in years.
I was careful, though.
I didn't broadcast these successes to my family. My Instagram posts were modest. A latte here, a book there. Nothing that screamed the truth. I wanted my independence to be mine alone, a secret triumph that wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations. By the time I turned 25, I was running my own boutique publishing consultancy. I had clients who trusted me, a network that respected me, and a sense of self that no one at home could ever take away. Every step I had taken, every struggle endured, every small win, was quietly documented in that leather notebook. My hidden success wasn't just financial, it was emotional, intellectual, and entirely mine. I had finally become the woman who could walk into any room, including my childhood home, and claim her space without apology. And yet I had no idea just how soon I would need that strength. I stayed in the doorway for a long moment, letting it all wash over me. Ethan, radiant in a crisp navy suit, was holding a sparkling flute of champagne, his fiancée, Samantha, glowing beside him. Confetti drifted lazily in the air, and a chorus of friends and extended family cheered, waving their glasses like a wave crashing toward me. 102 people, all celebrating my brother, and I was just standing there. I felt the familiar tug of old emotions, invisibility, frustration, the sting of being the quiet one, always in the background. But underneath it all was a steadiness I had fought to build, a calm confidence forged in long nights, hard work, and endless self-belief. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Ethan's smile faltered for the briefest second, and I caught my parents exchanging a glance I hadn't seen in years, the mixture of surprise and subtle guilt. I smiled, small at first, then broader, letting it grow until it filled the room. "Hey everyone," I said, my voice clear, smooth, calm, yet carrying a weight they weren't expecting. "I just came in for a charger, but I see I've arrived right in the middle of a celebration." Laughter rippled around the room, nervous and curious. I let it settle, pacing slowly through the crowd, noting their expressions, the wide-eyed shock, the shifting weight of recognition. I stopped in front of my parents. "It's been a while since I've been home," I said gently, letting my words linger. "So, I thought I'd share something with you all." From my tote bag, I pulled out my laptop, opened it, and swiveled the screen toward them. Charts, contracts, and client testimonials glared back in polished, professional clarity. "This is my publishing consultancy," I said, keeping my tone even, letting the room absorb the weight of the truth. "I run it.
Full-time.
I've been managing high-profile clients, multiple projects, and a growing team for the past 3 years." The room fell silent. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's jaw tightened. Ethan's grin wavered as his eyes darted between me and the screen. Friends whispered. Even Samantha, smiling politely, looked startled, the glow on her cheeks dimming slightly under the sudden shift. I leaned back against the counter, letting the silence stretch before continuing. "I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to build my life on my own terms, without interference or judgment. I wanted my success to be my own. But since I'm here now, I allowed a small, ironic smile to curve my lips. You can see I don't need anyone's approval to thrive." Mom's voice was a whisper, trembling. "Madison, we didn't know." "I know," I said softly, eyes meeting theirs. And that's exactly the point. For the first time in years, I felt the power of my own presence ripple through the room. 102 eyes, all registering a woman they thought they knew, standing taller, brighter, and unshakably in control. The quiet awe, the subtle shame, the reluctant admiration, I took it all in, letting it settle like a crown on my shoulders. This was my moment, not just a reveal of success, but a statement. I was no longer invisible. I had arrived, and I had done it my way. The room was still, a bubble of quiet tension around me. I could see it in my parents' eyes, a mix of pride, guilt, and uncertainty. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, unsure how to process the sudden shift. And Samantha, well, she was polite, but I sensed the flicker of unease. I took a deep breath. I've spent a long time building my life. I began, letting my words flow with calm authority. And I've realized that success isn't just about what I do. It's about who I allow into my life and under what terms. Mom's fingers tightened around her glass. Dad's lips pressed into a thin line. I continued. I want to be part of this family again, but it has to be different this time. Respect isn't optional. Dismissal isn't acceptable. And assumptions like thinking I need guidance or that my achievements aren't real are off the table. Ethan's face turned red. Madison, I didn't. You didn't notice, I said, soft but firm, letting the words land. And that's exactly why I'm saying this now. I walked slowly through the room, meeting each gaze. I have conditions, I said, letting them settle on the table like invisible markers. First, honesty. If you can't be truthful about your feelings, about your choices, then we can't have a healthy relationship. Second, effort. You can celebrate milestones like Ethan's engagement, but not at the expense of others in this family. That includes me. I paused, letting them absorb the weight of my words. Third, growth. I will support each of you, financially, emotionally, or with advice, but only if you're willing to change toxic habits, pursue your own dreams, and respect boundaries. No exceptions. I let my gaze linger on Ethan. You're about to marry someone incredible. I want to support that. But I will not let your life continue to overshadow mine. You need to understand that success isn't zero-sum. Mine doesn't diminish yours, but neither does it require your approval. My parents were quiet, Mom blinking rapidly as if trying to memorize my face, Dad shifting his weight from one foot to the other, and Ethan running a hand through his hair, caught between guilt and pride. I took a step back, letting the words sink in. I'm not here to punish anyone, I added, voice softening just enough to show I still cared. I want relationships that are honest, healthy, and empowering. I will give love, support, and guidance, but only where it's deserved, and only if it's reciprocated with respect and effort. The room exhaled as if the air had been holding its breath for years. There was tension, yes, but also a strange relief, a recognition that the rules had changed, that I was no longer invisible, that my voice mattered. And in that quiet, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, the balance of power, compassion, and self-respect. For the first time, I wasn't just Madison Hayes, the overlooked sister. I was Madison Hayes, accomplished, independent, and unshakably in control of her life. Over the next few weeks, I watched subtle changes ripple through the family. Ethan started asking for advice, not permission, about work, finances, and even planning with Samantha. Mom paused before speaking, considering her words instead of rushing to judgment. Dad, slow to shift, began calling me for guidance on decisions I never would have been asked to weigh before. It wasn't instantaneous. Growth rarely is. But for the first time, I felt a genuine respect flowing from my family, an acknowledgement of who I had become and the effort it had taken to get here. One evening, after a long day of work, I sat on my apartment balcony, the city lights reflecting in my notebook. I opened it to the first page, the leather cover soft and worn under my fingers. Grandma Lucy's words stared back at me. Don't let anyone decide what's practical for you. I smiled, tracing the faint indentations of my teenage handwriting. That little piece of guidance had carried me through loneliness, doubt, and sleepless nights. It had reminded me to believe in myself, when no one else would, and to build a life that was mine, fully, unapologetically. Now, standing on the other side of my struggle, I realized something else. Strength wasn't about proving people wrong. It was about proving yourself right, and then offering compassion and boundaries in equal measure. I thought about the party, the cheers for Ethan, the hundreds of faces staring at me in disbelief. And I knew I had finally arrived, not just in their eyes, but in my own. I had claimed my space, my voice, my dreams. I closed the notebook, letting the weight of it rest in my lap. The city hummed below, alive with possibilities, just as I always imagined. I could face the world and my family on my own terms, with grace, with power, and with heart. And as I stood, letting the cool evening breeze brush against my face, one thought lingered, crystal clear. I came home for a charger and left holding everything I had ever truly wanted.